Hello, everybody. Happy to see you all. So what do we have? I think we've got to start with questions. Okay. I need to start with questions. If you've read all the course notes, I'm very happy. So if you've read the course notes, please now ask me some questions. Anybody? Vicky, have you got some questions? Happy to see you, darling. No? Lou, you got some questions? Did you have a discussion before we started, right? Didn't you? What did you discuss, Dundrup?
We did. We discussed how to think about expectation in meditation, and then also we did a meditation on the clear light nature of mind.
From the book, from the course notes.
Yep.
That's great. I'm very good. I'm very happy about that. Okay. So then, okay, so let's just again, as an overview, let me just do an overview about talking about meditation, what it is, and how in day-to-day life we use it. This is the thing, I think. So if we just look at, again, just repeat, if we look at the classic, the typical way in the monasteries, for example, like if you're a monk and you go to, or a nun for that matter, and you go to a Tibetan Buddhist monastic university system, you start by studying. You learn refuge, you learn a few prayers, you memorize various prayers because they're creating merit. So you could argue that that's meditation, but they don't call it that, So they learn the different things and they relate to the Buddha, they do the visualizations, but they don't really learn proper meditation. You just kind of pick it up as you go along. And then, of course, as you study, you then start to study and you learn all the Dharma. And then you would start to learn how to get some concentration and how to do analysis, how to do using logic and analysis to internalize the actual Buddha's teaching, because that's what you do, the insight meditation. Insight meditation is a way to internalize the teachings. That's the one way. So in Tantra, that's different. You use visualization. But basically, the real purpose of the two modes of meditation, this is the classical use of them, is you listen to the teachings, you then get some concentration, you then sit down in the evening after your classes, you get some concentration. We discussed this before. You go to the second mode of meditation, and then you use logical analysis with this sharpened, concentrated mind in order to trigger insights into the topic, whether the topic is emptiness, karma, bodhicitta, whatever it is. This is the classic way. And if any of us are actually studying the Dharma, that's what we should be doing, So if you're doing a retreat, for example, you would, if you want to do a lam rim retreat, for example, a lam rim retreat, you would start in the morning, you do maybe your prostrations, you do your altar, you'd sit down, you do your devotional practices, and then you would take one of the topics from the lam rim, you'd get some concentration, and then you'd go to the second mode of meditation, and you would take that topic and you would use logic to work it through in your mind, just like you're studying anything, like you're trying to learn the violin music, learn math. You'd think it through logically, and then the penny would start to drop, and then you'd use and then you would get insight into those topics. So that's very powerful, That's how you use concentration meditation and the second mode of meditation to get insight into that topic. But the method you use is analysis, or simply clear thinking, just like you learn everything. That's using the two modes of meditation. And that's how you would internalize the teachings for us. It makes it experiential. So that's one classic way. And now the other one is there are all sorts of little techniques that we can do, like you just did a technique with Venerable Dundrup. You do all these little techniques that you can utilize in your day. Let's say you're feeling a bit distressed in the morning, you can do the 9-round breathing to steady your mind. You can even if most of us haven't even had empowerments in Tantra, we could do the visualization of Tara, of Chenrezig, and say the mantras. They are marvelous meditations. So some of the meditations, even if you don't have much concentration, they're really excellent for the mind, because you're visualizing Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion. You imagine light going out, you imagine receiving the blessings, you then say the mantra. So it's powerful merit for our mind. So there's two different things. There's various points I'm making. One is, in general, one way of describing what you're trying to do on the entire path to enlightenment is 1, purify your mind, and 2, create merit. So you could argue any of the teachings or methods or practices are either one or both of those. Some are more stressing the purification aspect, some are more stressing the merit-making aspect. So what merit means is simply doing anything that you put positive imprints in your mind. You're training your mind in virtue. So by simply visualizing Chenrezig, you even haven't had an empowerment, doesn't matter. Maybe you even haven't got concentration, doesn't matter. You would sit down, you visualize Chenrezig, you visualize light coming, you then say the mantra, and then at some point you would dedicate. This is an amazing meditation to do. Because the main benefit of it, you mightn't get much concentration. It doesn't matter, you know. What you do is you're blessing your mind with the imprints of the Buddha of compassion, and you're creating lots of merit. So that's the short term, but the long term benefit of doing any of these techniques, you know. That's the thing. And then, and also the other thing is, you know, this is part of the function of meditation as well, especially when you're doing these practices. It encourages devotion. It opens your heart. So, for example, you might do a little Chenrezig practice, and let's say you're devoted to, for example, Geshe Sherab in Thukta Norbu Ling. Let's say he's one of your lamas. And then when you do Chenrezig, at the same time as you're visualizing Chenrezig, you're also visualizing it's Geshe Sherab's mind, Lama Zopa's mind, his holiness, whoever you relate to. And that opens your heart, and it helps you practice. It helps you feel devoted and close to your teacher and close to the Buddha. So that's a real benefit that comes from these meditation techniques, you know, because it's something more personal, isn't it? When your eyes are closed and you're sitting in a quiet place, especially if you're doing a retreat, it naturally goes more deeply inside you. So there's a real benefit to that, you know. But again, the classic way of utilizing meditation, one, you get concentration, so that two, you can then do the analysis on the points of the path so that you can get insight and realize karma, realize bodhicitta, realize impermanence, realize emptiness, realize bodhicitta. That's the classic use of the two modes of meditation. But then there are all these other little techniques, you know, like I'm saying. You need to be a bit, you can start the day with 5 minutes of mindfulness. You can learn Mahamudra. You can read Lama Yeshe's book, and it's a slightly different approach. There's lots of little techniques. And I think the benefit might be for most of us, we might not get much concentration, but it gives us a taste. It gives us a flavor, because we're, like I said, we're sitting quietly with our eyes closed, contemplating something in a slightly subtler level. So it can't help but bless our minds, you know, so it's very beneficial, very beneficial. But again, the ideal is we need constant, in order to really get realizations, as they talk about, to really realize bodhicitta, emptiness, all these things, you've got to get concentration. That's a fact. But there's plenty we can do well before we get concentration. There is no doubt about it, you know. And we sort of, and again, it's a skillful means. You're feeling a bit distressed one day, you're feeling a bit hopeless, you know, no courage, you might do Tara meditation. You're feeling a bit angry, you might do Chenrezig to get a bit of compassion. These simple little techniques, and like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that can really help the mind, you know. So you just got to learn, sort of like you've got all these tools in your toolkit, and you can learn to use them when you need. Let's say you need a bit of wisdom, so you do Manjushri, you know, or even just you can recite the mantra. So technically, any of these are labeled meditation. You understand? But the meaning of meditation, the actual meaning of the word meditation, is only when you are actually doing the insight mode, when you are literally thinking through emptiness, karma, and then you're getting insight into it. That's the meaning of meditation, familiarizing your mind. That's what it means. So any of these, I mean, you're doing it whenever you, so if you sit there, do Chenrezig, you're familiarizing your mind with compassion. You do the 9-round breathing, you're steadying your mind, you're familiarizing your mind with the delusions. So it's like, it's to get the broader understanding of it, not to see them as these magical little techniques that do something special. It's kind of very superstitious, you know. So that's what I wanted to say, start off. And of course, I mean, one of the major ones we all do in the form of meditation is the 4 opponent powers. I mean, this is something that Lama Zopa stresses tremendously. And in general, the Tibetan tradition stresses this tremendously. As Lama Zopa says, we are insane not to do that meditation every day, because it not only purifies, it also creates bucket loads of merit just by doing those 4 steps. And this is the other point that makes us understand more powerfully the meaning of meditation, is is that, is just by doing those 4 opponent powers, by thinking through regret, recognizing things you've done to harm others, regretting it because you're sick of suffering, then going to the second one and thinking about refuge, then having compassion, then visualizing the nectar coming and saying the mantra, and then making determination to change. I mean, when you understand karma, you're intensely programming your mind in these new habits. And the more we understand karma, actually, the more any kind of meditation makes sense. You see it as a general method of, again, as I said, familiarizing your mind with 1, purifying the rubbish, and 2, creating the merit, creating the virtue. This is the point, But every second of the day, the more we practice Buddhism, every second that you wake up throughout the day, you are familiarizing your mind with virtue. You're familiarizing your mind with purification just by living your life, if you're really doing it properly. It's just that there are formal techniques that we label meditation, usually because you're sitting with your legs crossed and your eyes closed, But familiarizing your mind with virtue, we should be doing it every second. So technically, that's the meaning of the word meditation. So any questions, anybody? Any questions, dearest people? No?
Yes.
Yes, good, Vicky, darling. Talk to me.
Thank you, Venerable. I don't know if this is the right time to ask the question, but I want to check with you. Is it okay when I'm falling asleep lately? I probably do one of 3 things. Either I have my head in the lap of the Buddha, or I do Tonglen thoughts while I'm breathing, or I imagine the stages of the death process.
Right, perfect, wonderful, absolutely, Vicky.
That's okay to do?
Oh, darling, of course. So this is one. It's such a sweet little technique. It's often surprising to us. But let's say you feel close to one of the Buddhas, and you've got a Lama, especially. Then this is one of the I think I've heard this from Lama Yeshe. I think you visualize. Let's say you like Tara. You literally visualize going to sleep in Tara's lap. I mean, it sounds so sweet. It's almost unbelievable, isn't it? It's so kind. It's so sweet, Because you see. And then the other one, of course, absolutely, the 8 stages of death is incredible to do, Vicky, because as much as we can, we need to familiarize our mind with this process. So it trains us to being ready for death. It's incredible to do. And of course, the other one, Tonglen, is amazing too. I mean, any of these techniques are fantastic. Absolutely, darling. There's no doubt about it. They're all fantastic. They're all great, But the one of familiarizing yourself with the death process is really excellent at the time of death, because the sleep process is an exact replica of the death process. It's just that when we have to learn to become familiar with it, going through those 8 stages. Of course, most of us, you started and then suddenly you wake up next morning, you forgot, because we can't stay conscious at a subtle level, can we? But at least you can start. There's nothing wrong with that, darling. You can start, definitely. That's really good, Vicky. Perfect. What else, people? Any questions that have come up? All I can stress is I keep hoping that you've read those course notes, because she's gone into far more detail than I'm doing. I'm just trying to get a sort of overview of the point of meditation. And then you can choose. There's lots of little techniques that we just find very useful, that can be kind of have an immediate benefit for our mind. Like, let's say, the 9-round breathing, or even like 5 minutes of watching your breath. And then that they can be very helpful to steady the mind. But of course, the other ones that are really beneficial, because you're going through this amazing process, like the 4 opponent powers. You can't imagine the power of that meditation. It's utterly necessary to do. But at the same time, it's obvious, the more concentration you have, the more effective the meditations are, which doesn't mean you can't do it with your eyes open, walking on the street. Of course you can. Because whatever your mind does, it leaves imprints. So don't get too, it's true, classic meditation, if you've got concentration, you can't do it without your, sitting on a cushion. It's not possible to sit behind the wheel of a car and have single point of concentration and go into meditation. You'd kill, you'd die. So as long as we understand the broader point is to familiarize our mind with the virtue and purify the delusions, you must do that every second you're awake. And then there are formal ways of doing it. And then again, the more you've got concentration, the more likely you're going to have realizations. That's the absolute fact. So we got the classic one of trying to realize emptiness. You cannot realize emptiness finally until you have got shamatha. That's a fact. And this is where it comes to choice. One of the biggest decisions people often struggle to make. Well, if concentration is so important, if shamatha, if shine, if calm abiding is so important, then why don't we go off and do it, you know? And of course, the reason for most of us is because we're not qualified. I mean, I always quote this, but when I interviewed Venerable Rene 25 years ago about his 2.5 year, one of his first retreats, he's been retreating now for 45 years, getting single-pointed concentration. He said there was no way he was qualified even to go to the mountains to begin a retreat unless he had been a monk. He'd been a monk, he'd done masses of purification, he'd done masses of study, he'd even done masses of teachings. He said all of that was appropriate prerequisite for him to be ready to want to go into retreat. Because if you think about serious retreats, I mean, we're talking about, you've got to be pretty renounced already. I mean, you know, Pabonka Rinpoche, when he talks about the prerequisites for a person to be ready to go off and do single-pointed concentration, and that means a couple of years of your time, you know, or more. He says you've got to be completely have given up any of the ordinary desires of the world. You'd have to have no responsibilities like mortgages and children and husbands and wives and animals. You'd have no, you could turn, if you can walk, stand up now and walk up towards the mountains and not look back. Nobody, we've got so many burdens in our lives. It's not possible for us. Most of us are not ready. And then mentally, we're not ready because, you know, we're thinking about the problems. We're worrying about the food. We're worrying about the discomfort. We're bored after 5 minutes. So you've really got to be very prepared, pretty advanced already to have so much renunciation, to be able to go to the mountains. And then even for months, they say it takes you months to even begin to calm down so that all the normal chatter and worries of the world don't even arise in your mind, you know? I think I might have said, but maybe it was not here. There's a nice saying, Lama Yeshe mentioned it in Mahamudra, the best seeing is not seeing. And what that means is, why do you think our minds are so busy all the time? Because we're feeding our mind all day, every day, with talk, with other people, reading the news, watching, you know, reading the papers, watching television, reading iPad, talking about Will Smith, all the dramas of daily life. Our minds are completely, what do you think they're cluttered with? All these things we're talking about. So it can take months before your mind calms down enough that it literally doesn't go to those things. That's pretty incredible. I mean, this is like mental illness in the West. We think you're kind of crazy not to think about normal things, but that's what you need to do if you're seriously trying to get single point of concentration, you know. So we can aspire to it, and if we have the karma, the merit to do it, that's amazing. But I can say that after of all the thousands of students that you know, over the years that I've heard of or met from our lamas, just our students, and maybe 5%, maybe 1% have been the ones who've had the merit to go to the mountains metaphorically or literally in order to get single-pointed concentration. So it's pretty advanced already. But this doesn't mean that what we do is not useful. Of course, the more concentration you have, the more powerful your realizations, the more powerful your purification, the more powerful the creating of merit is obvious. But if you don't have it, then it doesn't mean you're not creating merit. It does not mean that. Of course you are, unbelievably. And that's why we should be happy with whatever we do. And that's why it's really nice to have a formal practice. In the end, you know, your formal practice is just a little bit in the morning, isn't it? And a little bit in the evening. And that's not as if that's the only practice, but it helps us to have a formal practice. It helps us to construct something in the morning, to first of all, keep our commitments, to make sure we've got our commitments, like if we've taken refuge and taken the lay vows, taken the bodhisattva vows, to at least know what we've agreed to do so we keep our word of honor and we construct our practice in relation to that, do something in the morning and then something at night. It's really good to lead your day like that. It helps us feel that we're accomplishing something. But the actual practice is every single second. You should be watching your mind every single second. You should be purifying and creating merit every single second. That's the point eventually. But it helps to have this formal practice. And the other one is too, I think one of our biggest problems, especially in the West, is we're always dissatisfied. We always feel we're not doing enough. We always keep thinking there's something missing. you know? So if you're actually not keeping your commitments, then indeed there is something missing. You better start keeping your commitments. And that itself takes time. I mean, to have the discipline of keeping your commitments every day, then you should feel very, very delighted just by doing that. Part of our problem is we get lazy, we give up the practice, and then we come back to it, we give it up again, then we get guilty, and we just drag ourselves down. So it's really important to have a disciplined practice. It can be short, it can be longer, but as long as you tick the boxes and know if you've taken refuge, what your commitments are, there's about a half a dozen. If you've taken lay vows, how to, to purify the vows. If you've taken the bodhisattva vows, we should know what our commitments are so we can construct our practice reasonably, so we know what we're doing. And then you feel good about yourself. Then you feel you've done your commitments, you've done your practice, and and at the beginning of the day and then finishing at the end of the day, then you feel very good about yourself and you just keep moving and you feel content with what you're doing. It's really important, So any questions? What do you think, people? I'm trying to just get the broader picture. I want you to read the course notes to get the details, but I'm trying to just get the broader picture of how we use this word meditation and what it means in the bigger picture point of view. It's so important. I'm trying to stress that. So do you have any questions, please, people? I'd really like it if you do have. And if you don't, then okay. And also, you see, some people, due to past karma, have an ability to concentrate. You see this, a lot of people, due to past meditation, past karma, from having done meditation, can do certain meditations and get quite, have some experiences from it. And this is something as well that can be very, very, misleading for us. Sometimes you can be kind of a bit greedy, saying, oh, I'm waiting for an experience. I'm wanting a realization. And I remember meeting one fellow years ago. He had been meditating, he said, for 25 years, I think just doing some kind of Zen meditation. And he was in tears saying, I've been waiting all these years for something to happen, waiting for a realization. Then you go crazy, You can't approach it like this. This is just ridiculous. It's like greedy. It's like ridiculous. It's really the wrong attitude, The broader picture always is to purify the mind and create merit. And that's why if you think that watching your breath is what a meditation technique is, it's not. It's called developing concentration, developing mindfulness, but they are technically not virtuous states of mind. They're only virtuous if you have a virtuous motivation, because they're called neutral states of mind. So we really can misunderstand the meaning of meditation and make just the fact that you're sitting down with your legs crossed, oh, I'm being virtuous. You're not at all. Your motivation is absolutely fundamental. Maybe if you're visualizing the Buddha, because of the power of enlightened beings, there is some virtue there, even if your motivation is not so strong. But your motivation is the key thing that makes your practice virtuous. The breathing itself is a technique, but why are you doing it? So you can develop wisdom, so you can help sentient beings. You do the 9-round breathing. Why are you doing it? So you can benefit sentient beings. You've got to put bodhicitta and emptiness under both of them. Otherwise, it's a boring. It's not virtue in its nature at all. Not at all. It's really important to remember that. And so many fantasies about what meditation is, and people are so different. I know when I first met the Dharma, I didn't want, the thought of sitting down quietly with my legs crossed and my eyes closed made me crazy. Everyone's different. I'm not trying to joke here. And honestly, people really believe you're not a Buddhist if you don't sit cross-legged and don't close your eyes. It's like the biggest cliche you've ever heard. I could not do it. There's no way in the world. I couldn't even be bothered doing it. But I wanted to work on my mind. I wanted to get the empowerments. I wanted the blessing of the Buddhas. I wanted to do mantras. But the thought of sitting cross-legged, forget it. It took me years before I began to do that. I'm not joking, people. So everyone's got to know where you're at. And we've got to know what means creating merit. We've got to know what it means to practice Dharma. Some people have a meditation technique, and that's it. That not necessarily is Dharma, It's not necessarily Dharma. Dharma is defined by whether the activity lessens your delusions and increases your virtues. If it doesn't do that, it ain't Dharma, baby. I don't care what you do with your mind. Relaxation, meditation is not relaxation. Meditation is not to get a vision. Meditation is not to make your thoughts go away. None of that's meditation. You've got concentration. The actual meditation, as I said, is the familiarizing of your mind with virtue. That's the meaning of the word to meditate. But nevertheless, like I said, there are lots of little techniques that we can adopt in our life that can be helpful, that can help us prime our mind so that we can do the job every day of controlling our body, controlling our speech, and transforming our minds, you know. It's always just the broad approach, I think, is so important. So what meditation did we do last week? What was it? We did the purification, didn't we, or not? Was it? Did we do that? We did, okay. What time is it? I'm in New York time now. It's 10 past 10. What is it in, where were we? Santa Fe, 8:15, okay, all right. So what else, people? I'm just raving on here. Come on, talk to me. Ask me some questions, please. Ask me some questions. Any questions you want. It's important. Come on. Yes. Good, Jenny. Go talk to me, darling.
If over the course of learning about Buddhism over many, many years, if you can't remember what your commitments are, or your like, should you just kind of start over?
Well, darling, I mean, it depends, because commitments happen. There's these different stepping stones in our being Buddhist. We know that. So the first one usually is when you formally take refuge. And then you take the 5 layperson's vows. And the next one is you would then take the bodhisattva vows. And the next one is you would take an empowerment. And then the next one is you take a highest empowerment, and then you take the tantric vows. And so these are the commitments and things that I'm describing, you know. So, you know, for example, if you've taken refuge, you're committed to say the refuge prayer morning and night 3 times. You've committed to respect the images of the Buddha and the Dharma books and the Sangha. You've committed to be kind to sentient beings. You've committed to offering your first mouthful of food and drink to the Buddhas. You commit to make offerings every day. Things like this, you know, basic things that would then inform the way you structure your practice. If you've taken the bodhisattva vows, you're the minimum requirement. Of course, you should become familiar with them because there's a whole bunch, and you should at least recite the prayer 3 times in the morning and 3 times at night, which is very short, that purifies your broken vows and strengthens your kept vows. Things like this, you know. And then if you've taken a highest yoga empowerment, there's lots of different commitments in there that we should learn and know about. And these are important things because they're like little bullet points that make up our practice. It's important to know these things, and often we don't and get a bit confused, you know.
Yes. And is it okay? Thank you very much for that. That clarifies a lot. Yes. Should well, I don't know, not should, but is it okay to take refuge vows like over and over when there's an opportunity?
Okay, I mean, first of all, there's 2 things. One is the formally taking refuge, which is one small thing. The second one is taking the vows. They're separate. They're not refuge vows. They're technically the pratimoksha vows. Refuge is one thing, and then taking the vows is another. And I think some people say you don't need to, but I think it's excellent to do it because it renews your refuge. And then if you take the vows again, that strengthens your kept vows and helps you purify broken vows. Because if you've broken vows, you need to take them again to purify. So it does really help the mind, I say, definitely. Yeah? Good, darling. Yes. Good. Yes, Jenny, good. What else, people? Any questions there? See, there's another whole level of discussion. I mean, in one of the modules, I think it's called Developing a Daily Practice. We can go into that. And that's the beginning stages. But so many of us have taken empowerments and we haven't got a clue what we're doing. We've got no idea what commitments and vows we've got. So that's just really, and it's sort of just like We need to be clear. We need to know exactly what we're doing. And so often we don't. We leap in. We heard some lamas taking something. Oh, I'll take that. We don't know where it fits. We don't know what it's about. So knowing what our commitments and vows are is a very powerful way to strengthen our practice, because at least it shows we know what we're doing, you know. And it's just, I mean, this is for me, I think, because we're all naturally lazy. When you do take these different things, you are committing. You're like making an agreement. You're like sort of agreeing with the teacher you take it from. You're shaking hands and you're agreeing they will do their job and you'll do your job. You know, that means you need to know what it is you're committed to. Like if you sign a contract, you would never just break that contract. You'd freak out. It's like that. You basically, and it's really, we need this kind of thing because it helps us become stronger, because we're all naturally lazy. So for me, I'm so happy I've got different commitments to do different practices every day, especially when you take an empowerment. You commit, you agree, I will do this every single day. You want to have that commitment because it helps you strengthen your practice. We need support because we're all very lazy. You know, we'd all rather just turn over and go back to sleep. So it's great to have a commitment, not to be pressured by it. You're glad to make that agreement. I think it's important. This is where taking vows especially is so powerful, you know. We need to know what they are, I tell you. I mean, that's what I found over the years. I know one time when I was in our center in Boston, and some people had taken the Kala Chakra empowerment from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So of course, His Holiness the Dalai Lama doesn't have Dharma centers. So, you know, us Gelugpa centers, we should provide the required needs. So I remember these people, they said, can you please help us go through what we're supposed to be doing? So we started going through the vows, and there was someone else in the room who'd done things 30 years ago. And she kept saying, oh, I'm committed to that. Oh, I'm committed to do that. Oh, I didn't know that. And so I realized we don't know what we're doing half the time. We're just confused, you know? So I remember getting all the different commitments and vows, putting all together in one document, so we at least know what we're doing. And it makes us feel a lot better because now we know what we've agreed to. Otherwise, we're just confused, you know. And of course, it is complicated. There's lots of stuff out there. But once we can get it, once we have the big picture clear, once we know why we're doing it, what a commitment is, what a vow is, what purification is, what merit is, all these terms, you know, that come in Buddhism, then we know what we're doing. It's really important to feel like we're in charge of it. And then the other one is, of course, the biggest one. I said it before, we're always dissatisfied. Even if you tick all the boxes and you know you're doing your job well, we still feel dissatisfied. Oh, I don't have any realizations. Oh, I still get angry. Oh, I still do this and I'm still lazy. We tend to be dissatisfied very easily. So if we are keeping our commitments and are doing our practice every day, be content with it. Be happy with what you're doing, because this is the other point that's enormously important when it comes to karma. In the world, I think the view of meditation is some kind of magical technique that brings immediate relief from pain and suffering. That might be true sometimes, but that's the way we use it. We use it as an alternative to a pill, you know? So and this is a very powerful point, what we want is immediate benefit. We want immediate relief. Now, indeed, sometimes it can be that, which is a great bonus. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we think of it only as that, then it's absurd. It's utterly absurdly short term. When we really understand the way karma is, which is that everything we're experiencing day by day by day, everything that's ripening every day for us, all the happiness and all the suffering, is not from what you did yesterday. It's not from what you did when you were 5 years old. Everything in this life, the seeds that ripen as this life's experiences have been planted, not just last life, but sometimes hundreds of lives ago. And then indeed what we do in this life can affect those seeds, can affect what ripens. But in general, everything we do in this life won't ripen in this life. It might trigger other results that will come as a happy mind after 5 minutes of meditating. But the long-term benefit is the point. You've got to realize you're on the long term. Every day you do your practice. Every day you do your purification. Every day you do your Chen-raising meditation. You say your mantras. You do this, you do that. You meditate on the Lam Rim. You're sowing incredibly powerful seeds that will bring benefit today and tomorrow, but the real actual results will come in future lives. insights. So you've got to be in for the long haul. Just like when I think that's why I love the analogy of planting a garden. We really understand it. You know perfectly well when you sow seeds in a garden, it will be months before they ripen. You don't have a panic attack because they don't come immediately. You know they're going to take a while to ripen, and your job is to nourish them every day. That's how to think about your practice, you know. So what ripens today is seeds from countless lives ago, and the seeds we plant today will ripen in the future. That's why we've got to be patient and humble and have the long-term view. Then you'll be more content. Instead of greedily demanding more realizations and more experiences. Oh, I've been meditating for years and nothing has happened. It's ridiculous. It's the wrong understanding, I tell you. When we have that view, we're going to be much more patient, much more humble with ourselves, and just happily do our practice every day, sow the seeds every day, do the purification every day. And yes, changes will come now, but they're the fruit of other seeds that our practice triggers. They're not the direct result of our practice. We've got to understand how karma ripens like that, you know. In other words, you're doing your practice every day. Let's say you're thinking, let's say you do a little lamb rim meditation on generosity. You're thinking about generosity. You're imagining being generous. You're aspiring to be generous. And then all of a sudden, next week, someone gives you a gift. And you think, oh, that's the fruit of my meditation on generosity. Well, technically, no. What that meditation on generosity did was acting like fertilizer on another karmic seed planted 22 lives ago that suddenly ripens as you receiving something. So your practice now nourishes other karmic seeds that then will ripen as good things happening. And indeed, that's also the other thing we have to remember, that bad things can happen as well, and that can be a good sign. In fact, it's a really powerful sign. The dirt has to come out, as Lama Zopa says. That's something that I can't stress enough, because we always, like I said, dissatisfied, waiting for realizations to come. I always quote that example of one of our monk friends who's a serious meditator for 30 years, 40 years. And after years and years of long retreats, you know, tantric retreats, he was out of his brain with extra levels of rage and arrogance, out of his brain, you know, and he was really distressed. And he went to Lama Zopa, and Rinpoche laughed and said, fantastic, the dirt has to come out. The dirt has to come out. I can't stress this enough, you know. That is a good sign. I mean, I always quote this too. Pabonka Rinpoche says this in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. You know, the concentration technique is described in terms of 9 stages. And just for the blessing, I might just read through from Pabonka Rinpoche, just read through for the blessing of listening to the different stages. It's very technical, you know, I'll explain it. I'll read it out. We will do that before we finish today. He said so it's described in terms of 9 stages. And he said a sign of success at the first of the 9 stages of single point of concentration is that you think your mind is getting worse. And he said, no, all you're doing is you're noticing the crazy mind. That, I think, is a very common experience for every one of us, and not just even from meditating, but just from trying to be a better person, because you're suddenly becoming conscious. You're suddenly becoming aware of your thoughts, which is the bottom line, finally. And you're becoming aware of what's already been there. You're not getting more angry. You're not getting more depressed. You're not getting more jealous. You're just noticing. And that is fantastic. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions about the function of concentration meditation, the function of mindfulness. We think it's to make the thoughts go away. Eventually, when you've got Shine, you will be beyond the conceptual. You'll be in utter control of your mind. That's not the goal, though. So in the beginning, when you start to think your mind's getting worse, be glad, because now you are seeing the problems. They've always been there, but now we're noticing. So we should be happy to see our crazy minds. We should be glad. Even people get sick. That's said to be a good sign, a purification. We've got to understand that, So we have all these misconceptions. All the thoughts should go away, and I should be happy and should be relaxed and good things should happen. It's just naive, Yes, Naina, talk to me.
I just wanted to say thank you for validating and sharing that information, because I think there is a stigma where people think with like meditating and starting to do this type of practice, it's like all rainbows and butterflies. And
yeah, that's right. Exactly.
For me, back in February, I got sick for a few weeks, and it just totally knocked me off my feet and just disconnected me from everything. And it led me face to face with fear and anxiety. And it led me to joining a Sangha and starting to learn and practice. And for me, it was, interesting of why did it feel like I was going crazy or so like I was just face to face with, I guess, what was already there, that I was, distracted with social media and shopping, and I was distracting myself from everything that's there.
Wonderful.
So thank you.
That's
thank
good.
you so much.
No, that's really good you said that. Thank you so much, darling. That's wonderful. You're on the right track. Keep moving. That's great. Yeah. Because in the end, this is the one that's when we start to meditate, we want to see the mind, because they are the problem. The problem, it's like, unless, it's like if you're on I find, again, a good example is if you go on a fast or you go on a good cleansing diet, right? You don't suddenly get magically better. You smell, your breath is ugly, you have farts, because you're cleaning up your body. So it's a good sign, not a bad one. You don't suddenly become all clean and delicious overnight after you've been eating junk food for years, and you start cleansing, the junk is going to come out. And we know it's a good sign. It's like putting your clothes in the washing machine. You're not unhappy that the water is filthy. You are glad the water is filthy, because now the dirt is coming out of your clothes. So we have to have that attitude. We have to have that attitude, Then we'll be glad about our progress, because it's a messy job we're doing here. As Naina said, it's just rainbows and butterflies. It's a messy job dealing with our garbage mind, taking responsibility, seeing our delusions. I mean, for me, there's no doubt about that. And again, for me in the very beginning, because I'm connected with Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe, I trusted Lama Yeshe. I mean, I'm kind of out of control person. We're all out of control. And I have to sneeze. Hang on. It was intensely difficult practice for me. It wasn't just sitting on my cushion kind of practice. I was working. Lama Yeshe gave me a particular job, and it brought up so much of my garbage, so much rage and rubbish, and it was very scary. But I knew I was seeing my mind. I was seeing my anger, seeing my arrogance, because I was in a situation that brought it up. So if we're really brave, we will see that that's a sign of good practice. If you just think it's all rainbows and going along feeling all la-di-da, you're not looking at all at what's going on. And of course, the level of delusions in our mind from the Buddhist perspective are so subtle. We've got to have the long-term perspective. So this is all part of the process. And that's why I retreat. I mean, I'm one of the few retreats I've done. I haven't done that many. But, I did a 3-month Vajrasattva retreat, which is the classic purification retreat we do. You do it for 3 months. And I'm no meditator, I promise. But 3 months of sitting there 12 hours a day, something has to happen, okay? And all I know is it was the most intense experience of, you go crazy. I mean, I remember one time we have this retreat every single year since about 1971 in Tushita in Dharamsala. At our center there, we have a special Vajrasattva Gompa. And every year people come and do the 3-month retreat. I remember one year I was there as a resident teacher, and I was guiding the people during the retreat. I mean, it was so intense. I mean, one of the women, she'd throw a book at somebody because you're sitting in this one gompa with 12 or 14 or 15 other people, 12 hours a day, every day for 3 months. I mean, it brings up the most intense delusions. You can't imagine it, this group retreat. Very powerful. But if you're really being brave enough, you see your rubbish. Just like you would if you go on a diet, the dirt comes out. and you're happy about it. You go to the gym, you come home after the first day, you've discovered muscles you never knew you had. You know it's a good sign. It's just that we don't like it because we want it all to go away. We can't bear the pain, isn't it? So we've got to really understand practice and the signs of success. Not, oh, I'm terrible bad. Oh, I'm so terrible. I thought I'd, given up anger by now. Be very patient and humble with ourselves and be glad about our progress. Be glad, rejoice, I tell you. So I think I'm going to read you. It sounds rather technical and rather boring, but it's kind of interesting. Just to read for the blessing from Pabonka Rinpoche. Let me find it. The section on, I think we haven't done this before. Did we do it before? Do you remember, Dundrup? If I did it before, you don't remember? I probably didn't do it, did I? How many classes have we got?
There's one more after today.
Okay, all right. Okay, let me find my book. Hang on a second. Let me find my book. Here it is, I think. Where is it? Here we go. Good, okay. I have to find it. Just for the blessing, to hear the 9, very brief, the 9 stages, the way Pabonka Rinpoche describes them. Here we go. Coming. Okay, so it's everybody in different translations, unfortunately. So it's hard to, because they all have different translations from the Tibetan. So this is by a person called Michael Richards, who translated this like 40 years ago. Here we go. So there's 9 stages, okay? So the first one, it's called fixing the mind. So this is achieved by the power of studying the instruction. So here the object, by the way, the object of meditation they're using here as a reference point, and this is very typical in the Tibetan tradition, would actually be the visualization of a Buddha. You can easily use that as the basis of your concentration, of visualization. So this is they call it the object of concentration. So I'll just talk about it in general. So however, at the very beginning, you are only evoking the visualization. You're only getting a sense of the object of your concentration. It does not stay, and you cannot make it persist for any length of time. So at this point, through the power of the mind's, of the processes of your analytical thinking, you can detect that you are under the power of the lack of focus or excitement. So this is the thing about concentration meditation. The 2 main obstacles that you're trying to completely conquer through these 9 stages is a very intense tendency of the mind, on the one hand, to be all over the place and berserk, or excited is the way they put it, the mind out of control. We know that. Or the other tendency, we know very well, if you sit down to meditate, you go straight to sleep. So the 2 extreme tendencies are the mind to be overexcited, or the other one is for the mind to become dull. So in concentration, eventually when you get that, you've conquered these 2 extremes completely. So at the moment, you have to be aware, and you bring your mind back to the object, and you're beginning to notice. So the next one is called, he calls it fixing the mind and fixation. This is meaning focusing with some continuity, number 2nd of the 9 stages. After meditating in this way, you are able to get the object of your meditation and can even make it persist for a while. At this point, your conceptual thoughts are sometimes peaceful and sometimes they are there chatting away. This gives you some insight into what it is like to be cured of conceptual thinking. I mean, this is intense. This is just number 2. So most of us haven't even achieved number 1 of the 9, Already, it says at number 2, you get a taste of what it's like to control your conceptual thoughts. I mean, the only time we control our conceptual thoughts is when we're fast asleep, right? So, but these first two mental states have a great deal of dullness and a great deal of excitement. And the object does not remain for long, object of your meditation. At this time, you are using, never mind that. So the next one is called Patchy Fixation. So by the way, just to get a reference point, Venerable Rene, the Swiss monk who did 2.5 years of retreat, he said he maybe, after the first maybe 6 months, he got as far as the 5th of the 9 stages. It took him about 6 months. That's the 5th, which is pretty subtle. And that's doing meditation sessions every single day and no other meditation, just doing these sessions. And you look at your mind, it takes incredible will, isn't it, to not follow the thinking. We can see this. Our thinking is completely berserk, you know. And luckily, because we have some virtuous thoughts, we're not out of control completely, you know. Patchy fixation is the next one they call it. So, where is it? The next one, it says, this state is like a garment with patches on the material. Though the image basically persists, the mind becomes distracted from the object. But you are immediately aware of this and you patch up your focusing on the meditation object. The duration of your distraction is shorter than in the previous 2 states. At this stage, you are developing a very powerful, it says memory, but what they mean is that word mindfulness. This is another whole discussion. Maybe we have to talk about this another time, but the meaning of that word is just, it's a part of the mind that brings you back to what you're doing because you got distracted, you know. So anyway, another day. So now the next one, good focusing, or he calls it fixation. You have developed powerful mindfulness, is this ability to notice that you're distracted and to bring your mind back to the object. So now you've got powerful mindfulness, or memory, they call it, that you're able to stay on the object. This is not concentration yet. Concentration is a very specific word used for subtler states. And you can fix your mind on the meditation object. From now on, it is impossible for you to lose the meditation object. And so this state is far more forceful than the previous 3. Just the same, while you are not losing the meditation object, you fall prey to the strongest forms of dullness and excitement. Both the 3rd and the 4th are achieved through the power of memory, which means good mindfulness, having your mind stay on the object. But from now on, never mind that one. The next one is called becoming disciplined. And this is the 5th of the 9. This is the one that Venerable Rene said he just touched upon after a few months. But let me also tell you this. This indicates the level of subtlety, even by this 5th stage. He said he just touched upon the 5th. And he said there was, and another time in the conversation when I interviewed him in Mandalay, he said there was no question that the joy his mind experienced was infinitely superior to any joy he'd ever experienced through his senses. So even just this 5th stage is an incredibly subtle level that most of us won't have touched upon. And that when the mind, this is the whole point that they talk about, and Lama Yeshe stresses this, that as our minds are distracted most of the time, they're deluded, angry, slightly upset, anxious, worried. That's why we're always miserable. That's why we're miserable, people. And when our mind is even relatively virtuous, relatively kind, generous, loving, that's when our mind is reasonably happy. So here, as your mind gets more subtle, less delusions arising, then just naturally your mind is more joyful, literally joyful. Hear the words. This is our natural state when the mind is unencumbered by the delusions. So even just the fifth of these 9, he said there was no question. The joy, the peace, the contentment that his mind experienced was so superior to any experiences of joy he'd ever experienced through his senses. Now that's pretty powerful, I think. Just indicates what our capacity is, you know. But the major difference of joy and in meditation, when you've really got it serious like this, is that it's not greedy, it's not frantic, it's not berserk, it's not out of control. It's the mind is utterly calm. This is a big surprise, isn't it? To be joyful but calm. It's a major quality. So the fifth one is becoming disciplined. So in the fourth state, the mind is overly knotted up inside. Now the fifth, the greatest danger is from subtle dullness. This Lama Yeshe talks about this in his Mahamudra book, that when you've kind of, the two major obstacles, like I told you, one is the mind never stopping thinking, all agitated, overexcited, berserk. The other extreme when you try to meditate is you space out. And that can be a big danger because people think it's nice. It feels nice, but it's just called dullness. There's no benefit. It's not concentration. But here we're talking much subtler levels of dullness that can easily be mistaken for concentration. It's a big danger. So here you develop a powerful vigilance. There's these various states of mind. When you study the Buddhist model of the mind, there's these various states of mind that I like to refer to as the mechanics of the mind. And they're very specific conceptual thoughts that you're using to train yourself in meditation. So one is attention, one is intention, one is discrimination, one is good mindfulness, one is vigilance. These are all the techniques and tools you use in order to eventually get the one called concentration. So vigilance, or alertness it's called, is another part of your mind, stands on guard. And it's very sharp. So the difference between the fourth and the fifth states is that only the former has coarse dullness and excitement, coarse dullness. So now becoming peaceful, the sixth state. In the fifth, the mind has been uplifted rather too much. And under these circumstances, the greatest danger now is from subtle excitement, subtle excitement. When subtle excitement arises, you develop a more powerful form of vigilance. These are names of states of mind. They have a very precise function. In order to detect it, you see that even this subtle excitement is a fault and that you need to prevent it. The difference between this state and the fifth is that subtle dullness is not the main danger here. Both the fifth and the sixth are achieved through the power of vigilance. At this point, it has been perfected. So you're getting ever more subtle, ever more subtle. The sixth, what's this? Seventh. The seventh. In the seventh state, it is very difficult to develop dullness or excitement because the power of your vigilance and mindfulness have been perfected. You develop the power of perseverance at this point, for you wish to abandon dullness and excitement as much as possible because you have looked into the danger that they cause. The difference between the sixth and the seventh states is this. In the sixth, you must be very wary of the danger of falling prey to subtle dullness and excitement. This is not the case with the seventh. At this stage, there is no danger from subtle dullness or excitement. All the same, in other words, your mind has become really subtle now. You've got grosser conceptuality, not at all. All the same, you must make an effort in the techniques to abandon both of them. In the fifth and sixth states, there was concern about the harm that excitement could do to you. Now at the seventh, you persevere and are able to put a stop to excitement and dullness whenever they occur. They cannot interrupt you for long. The 5 mental states, starting with number 3 and going up to number 7, are single-pointed concentration for the most part, interrupted by excitement and dullness. At these stages, okay, so then number 8, becoming single-pointed. At the beginning, you apply the antidote of mindfulness, and though this involves a slight effort, you are then able to pursue the whole length of the meditation session without the subtlest excitement or dullness. By the 8th state, you do not have to put effort into the application of vigilance. In other words, mindfulness is finished, vigilance is finished. You don't need to apply these tools anymore because your mind is now single-pointed. Not complete yet. After the 8th initial effort, during the 8th mental state, the whole session is not interrupted by dullness, excitement, and so on. Thus, at this stage, it's of uninterrupted concentration, of fixation. The 7th and 8th are achieved through the power of perseverance. Finally, the 9th. Fixation, or the focus, is now effortless. You spontaneously achieve this effortlessness by repeated cultivation of familiarity with the 8th state. You need not exert the slightest effort to slip into single-pointed concentration. So summarizing, in the first state, your insight acquaints you with your conceptual thoughts. In the second, you gain some insight into what it is like when your conceptual thoughts take a rest. In the third, it seems as if these conceptual thoughts have exhausted themselves. To summarize, in states 1 and 2, the object remains only a short while. In states 2 and 3, your distraction lasts only a short while. The difference between states 3 and 4 is whether or not it is possible for you to lose the meditation object. In the 4th, you develop coarse dullness, but not in the 5th. In the 5th, you have to be beware of subtle dullness, but not in the 6th. Though you develop subtle excitement in the 6th, it is less than you had before. In the 6th, you have to be particularly on your guard against slipping into subtle dullness or excitement. There is no need for this in the 7th. In the 7th, you have excitement and dullness, but not in the 8th. In the 8th, you depend on effort, but not in the 9th. In the 7th, you merely put a stop to your excitement and dullness. There is no need to be very wary of falling prey to them. That's all. That's it. That's for the blessing of hearing these stages. And may we all achieve single-pointed concentration at some point in the future. So don't give up, people. What time is it? 9. Okay. So any questions, darling people, before we finish? Nothing. So maybe we just make the aspiration. And we just, every bit of work we're doing now, all the practices we're doing, all the purification, all the creating merit, all our mantras, all our visualizations, all our efforts of doing a bit of practice, we think, may we sow all the seeds to achieve single point of concentration, shamatha, and just taste these subtle levels of our own mind so we can really begin to get insights into the stages of the path and realize bodhicitta, realize emptiness. Like that, we've got the potential. So every time, every day we practice, we make that aspiration that these results can come. So we're going to eventually realize emptiness and realize bodhicitta, and become a Buddha. We've got to have long-term patience and be very happy with our progress. That's the main thing. All right, darling people. I'm sure I'm cheating you of time again. I'm always cheating you of time. But enough information. And please study your course notes. Please read all the kind words that those, I think it was Sangakado did, in those course notes. She tells you lots of information. So maybe we finish with a 3-minute little meditation, okay? Just get your body comfy. Your back upright. Don't slump into the chair. Feet on the ground. upright, your head slightly tilted forward, chin tucked in a bit, your jaw relaxed, and just have your eyes lightly closed. And just with determination, for like 3 or 4 minutes, we're simply going to pay attention to the breath. Simple object, okay? That's the object. And that breath is the sensation at your nostrils as you breathe in and out. So with really keep it simple. The thoughts will be there. There is no question. Your thoughts will just keep raging on. That's what they do. So the job to be done is to simply, with determination, I'm going to pay attention to the breath. With determination, you're not going to miss one breath, and you're going to ignore the thoughts. You can't make them go away. Don't worry about them. Just don't go to them. That's the job. Stay on the breath with determination, just for 3 or 4 minutes, okay? Every time the attention wanders off, you bring it back to the breath. That's it. Just the breath. Keep your mind sharp. Focus just on the breath. Let the thoughts come and go. Doesn't matter. Don't sink into them. Just let them be there. Just the breath. Just relax now. Just relax. And we delight in what we've done. This little bit of time together. A few seeds we planted. Be happy with our progress, one step at a time, and make this aspiration to nourish these seeds we've planted by listening to these teachings, getting clear, long-term goal, never giving up on our amazing potential for our sake and the sake of others. Changchub, Semchog Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam Ke Guchi, Ke Panyampa Me Payang, Gongne, Gondu, Pabashog. That's it, people. And I won't forget next week. I'm so sorry. I'll still be in New York. Thank you for reminding me, gentlemen. I'm so sorry. And just do a little thing next week and do a little meditation. And thank you so much, everybody. Very kind. Good night, people. Bye-bye. Thanks, Chandra. Bye.
Thank you.